idiot, retarded. That's what the doctors called him. But I called him John. I'll never forget the first day that I held him. His face was the most beautiful thing that I'd ever seen. But he looked different from other babies. His head was noticeably smaller. He had upward slanted eyes, and the bridge of his nose was flat. It was at that moment the doctor told me what I'll never forget. Your baby is a mongoloid, and he will never be able to grow or develop like other children, and he will have multiple heart defects that could end his life prematurely. He said that it was in everyone's best interest that I gave John to an institution. The year was 1946, and I lived in Pennsylvania, so it was no surprise that my son would be sent to Penhurst, one of the largest institutions in my state. But you have to remember that I was living in a time when the eugenics movement was still very much alive. The field of eugenics was created by Sir Francis Galton in the late 1800s. It stated that all disabled people must be segregated from the rest of society since they could not cooperate or be active members of the community. It was thought that by removing people with disabilities and causing them to not reproduce, society would prosper. Yes, it's true. This happened right here in America. On May 2nd, 1927, on the court case of Buck versus Bell, Judge Oliver Wendell Holmes Jr. ruled in favor of sterilization and said his infamous quote, which will never be forgotten: 3 generations of imbeciles are enough. Imbecile? Is that all my son would be seen as by society? What about his basic human rights? Didn't he deserve the same human and civil rights as any other person? A job, a family, an education? But, unfortunately, an education was not available to us at the time. And although the mother and me told me to keep John and teach him myself, I decided to give him to an institution, since we had very little money at the time or resources to help him. But there was not a day that went by that I did not miss my son, and hope that he was being loved and cared for by the institution. 2 years later, I was reading a newspaper when I stumbled upon a letter. Attention parents of disabled children. A meeting will be held to address concerns and ways to handle community fears about people with disabilities. Please join us if you are interested. Sincerely, Florence Schwartz. It was exactly what I was looking for. A group of people ready to fight for the civil rights of the disabled. I didn't answer immediately, since I hadn't seen my son because he was in an institution. But I eventually realized that there were other people that wanted to see the same changes that I wanted. So I attended some of the later meetings. And eventually, on October 17, 1949, the Pennsylvania Association for Retarded and Handicapped Children was officially formed. I was very involved with the organization, even though I hadn't seen my disabled son since he was born. I guess I was always too afraid to go back into Penhurst to see his face again. But I eventually realized that it was my responsibility to ensure that my son had rights. So I went to Penhurst. You see, there were many other parents in my Pennsylvania division of the ARC that had children in an institution, but couldn't see them since Penhurst was so far away. So our ARC decided to run a bus every month, once a month, so we could all go see our children. The first day that I went to Penhurst was also my last day. I saw half-naked children. There was urine everywhere, and no toys for the children, and there were 9 and 10-year-olds wrapped into wheelchairs, unable to move, and it was at that moment that I realized that something was wrong. Birth certificates and documents led me to John, and I left with him that day, knowing that it was my responsibility to ensure that children with disabilities had rights. But I wasn't quite sure how to make that happen yet. The ARC did help me adapt having a child with a disability in my home. And I also became very involved with the ARC by helping them grant children with disabilities rights. In 1959, the ARC intensified its advocacy for research and asked Congress for full support on an international research plan. children with disabilities having the rights they deserve was slowly coming true. Finally, on December 23rd, 1977, the U.S. District Court for the Eastern District of Pennsylvania held the court case of Halderman versus Pennhurst. I'll never forget that day. Judge Broderick announced the parents of disabled children had filed a lawsuit against Pennhurst Institution, claiming their children's rights had been violated under the First, Eighth, Ninth, and 14th Amendment. After hearing countless testimonies of neglect, poor living conditions, and abuse, Judge Broderick ruled in favor of Halderman and said that all people or residents staying inside of the Pennhurst Institution must be moved into a good living condition. Eventually, an act providing rights for disabled people in institutions was passed. It took nearly 10 years, but on October 27, 1987, Pennhurst was officially closed. If only I could have lived to see it. You see, I passed away a few years before that. But that doesn't matter. All that matters is that I left my mark on the world. If it weren't for people like me, doctors, community members, parents, disabled people wouldn't have any of the rights that they have now. I've been watching my son, John, grow up. He attended school and then a job training program, and he eventually worked for 20 years doing what he loved, which is taking care of animals. When I passed away, he moved into a community living home where all his needs are taken care of. None of that would have ever been possible if the ark was never formed. When I passed away, my final words to my children were, it's your responsibility to look past society's label, the imbecile, moron, the idiot, to see beyond that, to see the person, to see John.